Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. On today, oh, geez. Get your mind out of the gutter, Hunter. Unbelievable.
Today's the day.
On today's episode, I got a little ahead of myself. On today's episode, we have a public service announcement that you should probably start practicing certain things before the end of, February? We're going to get into what those things are and how to peak for the Open, but most importantly, just sort of be ready for that one and done kind of thing. Housekeeping before we do that. If you are listening / watching this podcast on the Misfit Podcast on YouTube, make sure you are also subscribed to Misfit Athletics on YouTube. For the next week or two, we are going to be posting it to both accounts, but then eventually we will stop posting to the Misfit Podcast account on YouTube and just post to Misfit Athletics. So make sure you are subscribed there. And of course, you can find your affiliate programming needs at teammisfit.com or the SugarWad Marketplace, your individual programming needs at misfitathletics.com. Before we get into our public service announcement on what you need to be practicing and how to practice it, life chat. Hey, Hunter. What's up?
Hey, Drew. I was pretty sure your public service announcement was going to be that I'm more jacked in real life than you might assume.
Unbelievable.
Sebastian's first thing he told me was great, nice big hug, and it was just, man, you look more jacked in real life. It's like, thanks, man.
Hunter had a little
taller in real life, and it's just like we're sitting at the same. Yeah, see, but what I do is I tip my computer screen to make sure that I'm at the same height as you. So
yeah, they know. They know
taller
better.
And more jacked.
Yeah, I think the energy they can probably tell. Hunter, you looked good. You had a little bit of a pump going. I don't know how many curls you did before you showed up, but you did look a little more jacked.
Now. I did 9 burpees. 7 toes to bar, and a couple power snatches.
All right.
That's what the body responds to nowadays.
Does that count as your life chat?
Yeah, that was about it.
Cool.
That's all you really need.
I jinxed myself running my mouth about the fucking Steelers last week. Oh, yeah. I did say, though, that there was a likelihood that one of the 3 outcomes would be good. And only one was. So maybe I'm reverse jinxing myself this week and we'll move back in the right direction. But
do you guys clinch a playoff spot? Gotta be close.
Yeah. I think if the odds aren't 100%, I think it's probably they did. Yeah. And to be honest, like one cool thing right now is it could be a Russ revenge game. Right now it lines up for Pittsburgh to play the Broncos. Which would be great, honestly, just in general, because all of my college friends are huge Broncos fans, and the Broncos suck, so that would be cool. But if George Pickens isn't back, I'm not really sure. And also, if he's back, there's a chance that he might fight half of the team. I don't know if you've seen them play this year, Hunter. He is a wild card, the Steelers. He is a wild card of the, maybe the highest order I've ever seen. He's extremely talented, extremely volatile, gets into fights regularly, finds a way to turn. So the pass is thrown and you're like, there's no way this guy can catch this ball. He catches the ball and then somehow finds a way to make it not a catch. So he'll land on one strategy and leap out of bounds after making the greatest catch you've ever seen and not get his second foot in when he could have just stood there. Because he's trying to, it's crazy. There was like a 3-week period where he had the most absurd, beautiful catch non-catches. Two of them were touchdowns.
I feel like I remember kids in high school doing that. Or it's like you do something absolutely incredible and then go off sides on the ice and you're like, you're the fucking worst. It's like, just got past 4 defensemen and then you iced it.
Yeah. So he's the key to them playing well and the biggest liability I think I've ever seen. I wouldn't be surprised if he got ejected in the first quarter of a playoff game for punching somebody in the head. He's a real weird dude. Really weird, dude.
No, I can't say I've seen a Steelers game. Well, I did see the part of the Steelers game this weekend when they got into some sort of like a fight would be an exaggeration, a little tussle at the end zone, and then Mike Tomlin not looking very pleased with what the referee was telling him.
He said, "Get the fuck away from me."
Yeah, okay, that's what I was kind of like. I was like, I don't have to be a lip reader to read. Get the fuck away from me, and then wave him off.
So that tight end that threw that kid out of the club is 6'7", 265 pounds. So you're supposed to stop blocking once you get out of bounds, but like that's one of the most fun things ever, to run someone like onto their bench or into the wall.
Oh yeah.
So he basically just blocked him all the way through, and then it sort of seemed like, oh, who's going to try to pick a fight with Darnell Washington? But he didn't do anything after that. He stopped and backed up, and then the little guys started punching each other.
Nice.
Which I thought was funny. But yeah, the fact that they just gave the Steelers 2 penalties on that and the Eagles won was nuts.
Yeah.
We were already fucked, so we didn't need any help from them. All right. So we have, I think we'll get some new listeners for this podcast, depending on, how we title it. But we want to talk about how to peak for the Open, and there would be a huge preamble for an episode like this had we not done the previous episodes that we just did. So over the course of the fall and into the last few weeks, we did an episode on how to improve your engine, an episode on how to get stronger, an episode on skill acquisition, and an episode on how to actually improve in the CrossFit space once you put all of those things together. I would say one of the better 4-episode batches that we've done in a long time. I think those went super well. We had a pretty good conversation there. So I think one of the best ways to understand what we're going to talk about in this episode would be to go back and to listen to those. But for that not happening, hold on one sec. So I don't know if it's through yours, but I can hear myself. It's playing back into my headphones. I tried to fight it. I couldn't do it. I could hear myself playing through my headphones. I think that's going through over on that side. I think I'm good. Yeah. Cool. So with this episode specifically, we want to get into what it could mean to have sports-specific training. And in a more traditional sense, when we're looking at the strength and conditioning world, you'd be looking at a baseball player, a hockey player, a football player comes to you, and depending on how much of a runway you have before their season actually starts, let's say you're really far away, you're going to get into what would make you, from a physical sense, a better athlete in your sport. So it could be endurance, it could be power, it could be strength, speed, whatever it is. But obviously, as we get closer, we have to figure out how to continue to increase GPP and get you better at the sport, but also do enough sport-specific training so that you have also fine-tuned, whether it's the actual workout execution itself in terms of strategy, or what we're going to talk about a lot in this episode is specific to movement prep and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's CrossFit is unique in the sense that for the most part, people do the sport to prepare for the sport, right? We've talked about that when we talk about things like practice, so pieces that you might do on a daily basis in the programming that are titled practice, where it's in hockey, you spend the first 15, 20 minutes of practice maybe working literally edge work, working on your ability to turn, make a small radius turn on your edges on your skate blades. You're not touching a puck. You're not competing against other people. You're not trying particularly hard. You're just focused on a very specific skill. We do that here, but we don't the sport, the non-sport specific version of that is dryland training, right? So we're squatting in the gym, we're doing stuff on a field, and then the sport specific thing is actually getting onto the ice and playing scrimmages and games. Whereas CrossFit, the off-season stuff, you're still squatting, you're still pressing, you're still pulling, you're still doing your conditioning and stuff like that. It's just as we get closer to the season, we kind of narrow that band down a little bit as far as what movements we're going to focus on, what sort of like, and what we know about how the sport gets tested at the open level in the context of this episode.
Yeah, and the thing, especially right now, I don't want to give HQ a ton of credit for anything.
Sure.
But it's not as crazy and varied as a lot of like detractors would make you think, right? So it's like,
sure,
like we want to standardize the sport, and I know that there are certain entities right now that see an opening and want to basically create an offshoot of the CrossFit Games, and a lot of what they're trying to sell is like it will be more standardized. But I think we'll deliver a message in this podcast that lets you figure out that it actually is standardized until they tell you time domain, reps, movement combinations, things of that nature.
Right.
There are a lot more answers to the test that are given out that we've used to create, a successful competitors for a very long time. And those, I think, are the basis for telling someone how they could actually peak for the Open. So what I'm going to do right now is from 2019 to 2024, there have been 12 movements that have been programmed 3 times or more in the Open. I'm going to start with the least programmed and work up to the most programmed. Deadlift, dumbbell snatch, power snatch, wall walks, wall balls, bar muscle ups, chest to bar pull-ups, bar facing burpees, rowing, toes to bar, thrusters, and double unders. Now, one of the things that I do when I look at that list is I combine a bunch of them, right? Because in terms of like really understanding movement, there's a lot of carryover there. There's a lot of like this movement can be put into this category, or like obviously like they're really biased on pulling gymnastics and have been for a very long time. So in terms of like one thing that you could think about is when I see toe to bar, chest to bar, bar muscle up as 3 of the most programmed movements, like just your basic starting all the way down at the lowest level of someone who wants to improve in the Open. It's like, can you get your pinky knuckle up on top of the bar and control a gymnastics kip by opening and closing your shoulder?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I'm a little surprised here only because you've got so if we go further down the list to things that have only been programmed twice or once in quotes between 2019 and 24, we've got box jump over, burpee, box jump over. So like very, very similar movements.
Yeah.
Same thing with like unilateral stuff. Dumbbell overhead walking lunge. That's a quarterfinals movement. Step up. Sorry. That's a single arm lunge. Yeah. Single dumbbell step up, lunges. So a lot of these movements, even though they're separated by line item here, like front squat, clean complex, clean and jerk, squat clean, all have their own line item, but they're all the same movement. And I think, like, if nothing else, it goes again to like, I actually really like seeing this list because when I program or kind of structure out the affiliate programming, I have my movements that are deemed like high frequency, medium frequency, and low frequency. So you're not going to see GHD sit-ups as often as you're going to see wall balls in the affiliate program. Hopefully you don't in any program, but we get the idea of, and all of these movements that we see 3 times or more are either like one of the 9 foundational movements in CrossFit or a very like close descendant of that movement. And they're all super basic movements. They're all movements that force large ranges of motion. So large loads, long distances quickly. And it's just like, these are the movements that test fitness. We have a whole shitload of other movements that we can use to train it. But when it comes down to the Open in particular, where we need to test a shitload of people in order to narrow it down, it makes sense that like we're not really pulling movements from the fringe here. It's like thruster, rowing, double under, thruster, toe to bar, row, double under, like the first 4 movements. Like, say it ain't so. Just like basic classic CrossFit, not because it's basic classic CrossFit, but because those movements have the capacity to essentially bury you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like done at intensity is going to force the fittest athletes to the top of the leaderboard.
Right. And like you look at it from the standpoint of like old school CrossFit programming of the weightlifting, monostructural, and gymnastics. And
Yeah.
you're like, okay, we have double unders and rowing. Like those are our monostructural movements. Maybe you pull the wall ball into that. You've got your
Burpee.
bar facing burpee. That is a very doable list that's antithetical to the idea of no standardization, because the sport wouldn't be the sport if we just had to figure out how to master a single workout. We have to master the movements, and we have to master the separate time domains, and we have to master like 10 double unders, 40 double unders, 300 double unders, whatever it is. But there's so much more standardization to this than you would think. And then you see 12 instances in 6 years of pulling gymnastics. And it starts with, like, I love the idea of like the toe to bar being the one that's highest up on that list that shows up the most often, because like that's the, like, to me, like the easiest movement to start with from a foundational standpoint in terms of understanding pulling gymnastics. And then you sort of work your way down to the chest to bar, to the bar muscle up, and that sort of thing. So again, this list, as you alluded to, could be condensed way down, right? There's probably 25 movements on this list, but it includes thruster and wall ball and front squat and clean complex and clean and jerk and squat clean, right? Like, how much could be like squatting in the front rack? Like, do we know?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Do we know how we're going to move if it's 75, 95, 135, a 1 rep max, like that sort of thing? So understanding with that sports specific transition, and hopefully, I think it's January 13th, you start open prep with us and we help you peak. But like, you can start these things now. You can start to look at this and say, every single year there's double unders. And they've gotten rid of quarterfinals. So those years where they did rowing, not in the open, and then in quarterfinals, you're going to have rowing, right? Like that sort of thing. And we get so wrapped up in the muscle ups and maybe the pistols and the handstand walk and the strict handstand push up. And I think that will transition us into the leveling conversation. But that's the cart before the horse. Like, you could get really, really good at the open by locking in on double under, thruster, toe to bar, row, bar facing burpee. Let's leave out the chest to bar. Like, if those movements showed up enough, or the adjacent movements that we referenced, and you practiced them and you warmed up to do them and you thought about your movement efficiency, like, you would fly up the leaderboard in the open. And that could just be like, hey, I like to use this as a metric to show that I'm making progress. Or we could be talking about the athlete that can consistently flops around from 1800th place to 3000th to 4000th and kind of up and down and all over, that wants to qualify for the online semifinal. Like, you locking in on these movements and understanding how to execute them, I think could completely change your placement outside of the entire conversation of peaking in terms of getting you as fit as you possibly could be.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said, getting you as fit as possibly could be, it's like, it's not, the conversation isn't necessarily get really good at these movements. It's understand that these are the movements that are best suited to improve your fitness and therefore improve your placement in the open. So you can, chicken or the egg sort of conversation, but the idea here is that, like, these movements have, like, just looking at them, anybody who's an experienced coach or programmed for a long enough time knows it's like, yeah, obviously those are the movements that you're going to see the most often. Like I said, they big ranges of motion. They can be, there's a lot of kind of, there are a lot of ways that they can be programmed to elicit a different stimulus. And, when Castro goes into program, the goal is not to create workouts that get somebody stuck immediately. There's been a handful of workouts ever in the open that start with muscle ups. We had that one, the muscle up wall ball double under workout that year when everybody was like, oh, they'll never have muscle ups first in a workout because they want to let everybody play. And it's like 7 muscle ups. Fuck. Okay. But that doesn't happen often. And odds, like if you don't have, there's a difference between not having the capacity to do a movement at all and then not having the capacity to do that movement under fatigue after 10, 12, however many minutes of work that you've done. And all that comes back to how is your fitness. It's not going your ability or inability to do a movement. If you don't have the ability to do a movement, obviously that's a hard stop. But like a perceived low capacity in a movement is not nearly as detrimental as not being good at those movements that Drew just listed from a capacity standpoint.
So I look at this in a lot of cases if I'm auditing, if someone's coming to me for advice or I'm their remote coach, I'm looking at this list and kind of bracketing some of the movements. And that's why I just listed the movements that I did. So we have double under thruster, toe to bar row, bar facing burpee. I would put those in that sort of level 1 kind of category. I think that's a good bracket to start with. What do you say, or how do you coach the athlete that has the requisite fitness and struggles with the movement patterns? So your athlete that's tripping more over the double unders or inefficient in their thruster or, scooping their toe to bar, shoulders back first in the row, like that kind of thing. How does an athlete, as we try to peak for the open, also incorporate the fact that if you're more efficient in those movements, especially in the merry-go-round 20-minute AMRAP, you can do a hell of a lot more of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of goes back to the conversation we had last week about skill. And in a lot of ways, we were alluding to maybe gymnastic skill, or that's maybe what people think of when they think of skill. But like, again, going back to the thing that I said at the beginning of the podcast, in a sport, like I played hockey for a long time as a kid. Like you don't go to hockey practice and just scrimmage the entire time. Every kid would love to do that. We'd all rather play the game than do edge work and do puck handling drills and whatnot. But those drills are what improve your ability to play the game. And it's the exact same thing here. If you suck at double unders, like we need to break it down and figure out whether you actually suck at them, whether is it a mechanical thing, like we're literally just putting our hands in the wrong spot or we're jumping inefficiently, or do you just need more exposure to the movement in a low intensity setting so that you can practice things like breathing through a set of double unders? Can you practice doing a kip swing with your toes to bar and then bring your knees up to the bar and then straighten your legs back out and get long again? Can we just break these movements down outside of intensity, make them beautiful, and then put them back in? It's like the athlete that you're talking about, man, if you're somebody who has the requisite fitness, but you suck balls at those movements, like, Jesus, like
we've seen it though. You get someone that
you
comes
see it at
in
the
and they
CrossFit
see,
games,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I mean, like at the extreme level, like people with phenomenal capacity, but the movement patterns of a fucking goat, like it's see Sebastian in the corner there, but yeah, it's just for that athlete, it's either maybe it's part of the warm up, it's part of the practice session or whatever it is, but yeah, we need to break the movement down. To get better at thrusters, we're not just going to do Fran every day. It's like, what about the thruster do you suck at? Is it positional? Is it mobility? Is it just a lack of understanding of core to extremity, that sort of thing? Or you're a muscle hamster who doesn't need to worry about using their legs and their arms? What is the actual problem? And then it's just the practice of the component parts of the movement. Same thing you would do for any sport. You want to get better at a certain thing, you practice, you break down that movement into its singular parts and then try to put it all together.
During competition prep, there's a column that has sort of taken over in our programming called practice. I call it reps during competition prep because it's the idea of there are only so many opportunities within a week for us to get movements in, and it's only appropriate a percentage of the time as well. if you're doing a bunch of running, doing a bunch of double unders or box jump is not necessarily going to be the most appropriate thing. If you're doing a ton of toes to bar, that can take away from your chest to bar or your bar muscle up volume, that sort of thing. But the overall idea of this isn't going to show up in the programming, so I'm going to have you practice it, is something that at that like first bracketed level, the lowest level in terms of skill, where you could easily practice those things under low intensity. And I would much rather see an athlete do that on top of their workout of the day and the one lift than to add any volume with intensity. Like just, 5 or 6 sets of an easy or a smooth or a hard set of double unders. If you did that every week leading up, you'd probably have a much higher likelihood, again, of doing better. And I know that it's boring to say that you will be doing double unders 100% of the time. And it's honestly not even real that you would be doing muscle ups 30% of the time, because they typically put them in a place in the workout where you'd have to be fit enough and efficient enough at things like double unders to even get there. So it might be 0% of the time. So that's why I bring up the conversation of leveling, because I've seen too many athletes come to us, whether it's in the gym or at a training camp, that are like, look, I finally have my double, my triple on the muscle ups. I'm handstand walking. I can do kipping handstand push-ups. And then like their wall balls are really ugly. They're tripping over themselves and have the like one hand is, up by their ear when they're doing their double unders, that sort of thing. And it's like, this is a very backwards way to look at like how you should come in and attack this. So again, like that public service announcement, to like circle back to it, is really just, you have time to get into this, and we're not going to start that peaking phase for another month, but like identify those movements, and we'll continue down the levels a little bit, but identify those movements that give you the problems and just practice them. Like it will make a huge fucking difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for that athlete who is maybe in that, level 1 sort of tier that you're alluding to, the lower skill, like, man, I would say this goes beyond that as far as like athlete ability goes, because I do feel like the farther away we get from, maybe CrossFit ground zero in the early 2000s to today, like the methodology is going by the wayside for a lot of competitive athletes. A lot of competitive athletes see the CrossFit Games and are like, these are the movements I have to do, without a more foundational understanding of like, I guess of like CrossFit as a whole. And it's like pyramid, development of an athlete. Like above your nutrition is your metabolic conditioning. It's not gymnastics. It's not your skill. It's not your ability to do muscle ups. Like that doesn't come until you have sufficient metabolic conditioning to even rate moving on to like gymnastics, body weight movement. And that we don't even touch weights until we have a baseline of metabolic conditioning and the ability to move your body through space. So, and I'm not saying like, hey, that's the order, you're not don't touch a barbell until you can perfect the muscle up. But we understand the idea that like CrossFit does a pretty good job when it comes to programming for competitions, the open, quarterfinals, whatever, of finding the right athletes based on like, how do we find the fittest person on earth using the CrossFit methodology? And that's, the variance, it's the time domains, it's the stimuli, it's all that sort of stuff. And all of the movements that create that are the most basic movements that we have for the most part.
So I'm going to look at a different list here to talk about the second set of bracketing, just because there's this whole like issue of there's no quarterfinals this year, right? So when I'm looking at the list, it's like, hey, how much more complexity will they bring into the open? So I also have a list that basically combines the open and quarterfinals. We only have 4 years of data. We only had 4 years of quarterfinals. So I'll do the same thing. Any movement that's popped up 4 times or more in that combination, starting with the least program to the most program. Wall ball, strict handstand push-up, snatch, rope climb, muscle up, dumbbell snatch, chest to bar, bar muscle up, double under, burpee box jump over, row. And we can create, I think, our sort of second set of bracketing there just by looking at it from the standpoint of you gotta be good on a rower. Like if that wasn't obvious to this point,
right?
Like getting good on a rower and getting used to the rower, and trust me, there's enough rowing in
Did you go
our.
3 movements or more? 3 times or more? I mean,
I
sorry.
went 4 times or more.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so the row and the double under very present there. We have a little bit of a level up when it comes to the burpee. We've got the burpee box jump over. But to be honest, there aren't going to be a ton of athletes who take the time to understand that it's a hip closing movement and not a push up on the bar facing burpee that aren't going to be able to translate that and the GPP over to the burpee box jump over. And really beyond that, we're just getting into more complexity with the pulling gymnastics for the most part. Like we've got the strict handstand push up in there. Again, typically put towards the end of a workout, that sort of thing. So most of that, to me, most of that second level of bracketing is more complexity within pulling gymnastics.
What movement?
Just going from, so in that first bracket, we have the toe to bar. And now we have bar muscle up, chest to bar muscle up. So like that seems to be the place. And that's definitely like at the affiliate level, just a very large separator. Yeah. Like your ability to move through space in the pulling gymnastics once we get beyond the toe to bar.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And to be clear too, like the overlap is massive here. Rowing, burpee box jump over is, it's a different movement, but for all intents and purposes, it's a burpee.
Yeah. Yep.
Double under, the bar muscle up, chest to bar just moved up the list slightly. But again, like for the most part, we haven't seen a ton of like same movements in the open and quarterfinals. So the movements that are on this list, like they were preceded by, their lower skill kin,
yes.
I guess. And like, a rope climbing quarterfinals, presumably that, we've got way more athletes at the affiliate who can climb a rope than can do chest to bar pull-ups. So you think about that more as probably a logistical consideration for CrossFit with, the open versus a smaller sect of quarterfinals. But like the big, just what stands out to me is like, wall ball, snatch, muscle ups, dumbbell snatch, chest to bar, double under, burpee, row. Like it's all the same. It's all just slight minor modifications, which again indicates that we don't necessarily need to be worried about very specific movements unless it's a massive hole in your game, and realize that these movements just get paired together differently. The weights change, the rep scheme changes, and that's how the complexity and the difficulty kind of comes about. But for the most part, there's a ton of overlap here between
100%
quarterfinals. Like
there's a ton of overlap, and again, you have the first list that we talked about basically just naturally turns into the second list if you are, again, efficient in movement and understand what you need to be doing to improve there. It's a natural progression to get good at this next set of movements. One of the things that I think can be an issue is the like competitor mentality of the amount of volume that you need to be doing to improve within the sport, specifically to like a lot of the athletes that you're watching and you're seeing how much training they're doing, and then you're going to see their program and how much training they're doing, are preparing themselves for a 3 to 5 day in-person competition. Like we're overreaching beyond the 2 to 3 workouts a day situation. The open is probably going to be one short, one medium, one long, and maybe a lift, right? Yeah. Like that's what we expect there. And you
spread out over 3 weeks.
Exactly. Spread out over 3 weeks. And that is a skill in and of itself. Like there are athletes who would love to be thrown into this like gauntlet, this meat grinder of a weekend, because they know that they handle volume better, because they know that they're a little bit more well-rounded, and that if the programming is good, that like it will come out eventually, like they'll spit out the other side where they want to be. Those same athletes don't always have the ability to execute in the one and done environment either because they're not used to it and they haven't practiced it and they haven't really learned to lock in on a specific workout, or just because there's going to be less variance, right? There's going to be less, like, they're not going to get to see that thing that they want to be able to pop up so that they can go take a huge score. And then obviously the other issue here is the golf scoring versus game scoring. Like, you can't take a really bad event in the open. You can take a really bad event in person, but you can't necessarily in the open. So the way to improve on this is to think about it from a bit more of an old school mentality. Like, I have every day that I go into the gym, I have that one workout circled. Like, I'm going to do my full sweat check. I'm going to stretch in the way that I need to get into the positions. Maybe the thrusters, like, you sit at a desk all day and then you go out there and you try to do thrusters before you do your squat hold and your couch stretch and make sure your ankles feel good and, peanut on the T-spine and all of that stuff. But you're going to go in, you're going to warm up the way that you should. You're actually going to look at the workout from a competitive standpoint, right? Like, as we get closer and closer, you need to know, we've talked about it so many times in the last few weeks, how to read a workout and like what you need to do to execute, which we can help with once the open rolls around. But if you don't practice it before that on your own, you're kind of screwed there. So I really think that leaning into, like, I have this one thing, and you can do more stuff outside of that, but just this one thing that you're really locked in on, and you can understand how to put a ton of eggs into a single basket.
Yeah, it's so weird. You see, like, what we've both seen it happen where it's just like athletes have no problem doing 2 to 4 or 5 training pieces in the gym every day. And it's like, you're as a coach, you're like, fuck yeah, like, scores are going good, lifts are going good, we're looking good, athletes feeling confident. And then it's like Thursday 3 p.m. rolls around and it's like 10-minute AMRAP, burpee box jump over, fucking thruster, whatever it is, dumbbell snatch, ladder, dumbbell snatch, burpee box jump over. Everybody loses their mind. And it's like, it's like, we didn't see this coming. It's like, motherfucker, what do you mean you didn't see this coming? Like, I need you to be able to go
again.
I need you to be able to go insanely hard one time. And the athlete that you're describing, like the gauntlet, it's like, I compare it to the affiliate athlete who wants to do a hero workout every day. It's like, now you just want to, the difference between training and competing is like, at some point that mindset has to switch over from, like, I'm doing all this volume in order to make sure that I'm well-rounded, but none of that matters if I can't put forth a massive amount of intensity for a relatively short period of time once per week. It's like your capacity to handle 3 to 5 workouts a day only matters when you get to a stage of competition that calls for 3 to 5 workouts a day. And, like, spoiler alert, statistically, it's not you. Like, respectfully, like, we have to get through that initial gauntlet of the open that requires a tremendous amount of intensity that says, I don't care if you can do a set of 15 muscle ups. I care that you can repeat your sets of 3 muscle ups when your heart rate's at 190. Same, or a thruster, or whatever, whatever the movement is in the open workout, we have to be able to go hard. And that scares the shit out of athletes because they don't do it often enough in the off season.
Yeah, and we ask our athletes at the very highest level to have, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks a year where this is the type of training that they do, so that they have practice for this. Because what you're referencing is, when you look at a whole week of programming for one of our highest level competitors and you zoom all the way out, the story that's told across all of the pieces is very impressive. It's like, man, like, you're strong, you're skilled, you were able to push on this machine, etc. But then we take the open leaderboard and it's like 947 reps, 946, 945, 944.
Yeah.
If you go to the top on those 20-minute AMRAPs and you see the best athletes in the world battling for 1,000 reps of something, which is absurd to say. And I don't know, you got, 910, 890, like, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But, like, do you know how to warm up, strategize, execute, die/cool down, and, like, actually go over your notes and try to figure out where you did what you were supposed to, where you didn't. Like, do you really know how to do that? Because there's a ton of fitness to be had in that, of course, but like for a lot of athletes, it's a learning experience. And we'll see it here at the affiliate level. Like, we'll get some pretty fucking good open scores at the affiliate level.
Yeah.
Because like our members salivate at something real gross and they just come in and warm up really well and do it.
Yeah. It's funny. Right before the podcast, we did it was actually like open prep if I've ever seen it. 11 minutes of 9 burpees, 7 toes to bar, 5 power snatches at 135. And it was like, I did the practice round primer for the 9 a.m. class to get a feel for it. It's like, hey, we want you slotting somewhere in that like 5 to 8 round range. Here's the speed that you need to complete your round on average in order to get this score. It's one of my favorite things to do because I coach classes that usually already have scores on the whiteboard, and usually there's at least 1 or 2 scores that are up there that I know are going to hold pretty high on the leaderboard in the affiliate for the day. Everybody finishes their practice round, and I get to tell them my usual, congratulations, you are all on pace for the best score of the day by 3 rounds. And it's like, I have something to tell you all, like, respectfully, none of you are in danger of the best score of the day. Okay, so let's pump the brakes a little bit. One of the athletes who did it with me in open gym right after the class, he and I did it together. He beat me through his practice round, and he was like, that was kind of easy, but looking at the scores on the board, I actually need to go a lot slower. And I was like, yeah, probably.
Dude, fresh burpees feel so good.
Dude, what do you mean? These 21 reps? I'll pull a 108 round. I don't give a shit.
Easy. Yeah, it's and that leads to the next note that I had here. Like, part of it takes a long time to do one and done correctly if we're thinking about it from the sport perspective, because we talked about the warm-up, which would include, in a lot of instances, to be more efficient, a ton of mobility that's there. You could have the practice round. You could compare the practice round to scores that you see on Fitter or in Discord and start to see like, hey, this doesn't, like, I'm probably not going to get this many rounds. The more you get into your athlete IQ journey, you should be able to know I'm probably not going to get that many rounds, like, to begin with. But having scores to compare, having a coach help you is really important. Then we have to like cool down, potentially stretch again. And then we got to go over and look at our split times and like completely try to reverse engineer this workout, because the jumping up however many reps you need to on the leaderboard is like, you have to have, if you want to be anywhere near the like fullest potential that you could have, you need to execute incredibly well. So you could like do the workout like you did today, like using you as an example, how would you have felt about like if you had gone back and did your split times and thought about how you could have like improved on the workout or not?
I mean, I kind of did that. Like I knew what the workout was. I did the math on and I had the benefit of seeing a couple of scores that were like in line with what I might be shooting for. So it's like, so I know what's possible. And again, in a lot of instances, like, you as an athlete can do this, because it's like, unless you're doing the workout first or you just happen to not have access to any scores, like, for the most part, you can get an idea of what is possible. And if you don't, like, just do ridiculous math and be like, okay, the fastest somebody could possibly do that is this. And then you can be like, okay, well, that's not me. So, you know, whatever the round is, but I'm doing the math, and it's like, maybe for me, I'm thinking about a little bit more of like, well, at what point did I feel bad in the workout, and could I have made myself feel a little bit worse a little bit sooner, and then still held on to that for the end? Could I have, for me personally, I'm very good at like picking a single pace and holding it very consistently. The problem that I run into is a lot of times, like, I pick the right pace such that I don't really have a whole lot of room to speed up at the end. Whereas a lot of people, you get that 1 minute kick, and I'm like, motherfucker, I've been 1 minute kicking for the last 9 minutes. Like, I'm in the kick, you know. But a lot of athletes,
which is how it should be,
for sure. And but then there are other athletes who, like, maybe you do benefit from that. Workout's not a good example, but maybe you do benefit from having positive splits, right? It's like, we know that your first round, and this happens in a lot of different workouts, especially like a gas tank sort of stimulus or a muscle overload one, where it's like, I expect you to have your first round to be your fastest, just the nature of the workout. It's just a matter of like, how much can we minimize, whether it's rest in between sets, transition time, could we be a little bit more strategic, about how we break things up here or there in order to shave time off of the next round, whatever it is. And just that a little bit of self-awareness of what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then how do you leverage that in order to improve on a retest? Because you said it at the beginning, it's like, we're testing. I don't remember what you said exactly, but this is the time of year where it's like, we're not gaming this workout to get the best stimulus possible to work on our muscle ups, right? It's like, how do I game the shit out of this workout to leverage my strengths, prevent my weaknesses from derailing me completely, and get the best score possible? And that comes through paying attention to what your plan is before the workout, and then a little bit of self-reflection after. Say, hey, where can I speed up? Where could I have sped up? Where did things go wrong? Why did I think that doing touch and go in the first 2 rounds was a good idea? I'm an idiot. Like, those sorts of things. And then that can inform either the retest or, just inform future pieces.
When I program, I use the YouTube archives of CrossFitters crossfitting so much.
Yeah.
The amount of tabs that I have open, because I want proof of concept immediately. Like, I want to know, like, hey, when it is this movement combination, I think I remember that's whatever, 17.2. Like, let's go back and look at it. And you watch these online qualifier workouts, and the best athletes in the world, and this may seem obvious, but I'll get to the point. They're always moving. You need to, we call it no standing around season. It's going to seem wrong, especially at the beginning of the workout, right? Because that whatever 108 round that happened out there for a lot of athletes didn't feel bad. Why wouldn't I do that? That doesn't make any sense. And it's like, well, if you go outside and you run for 400 meters
and 8 seconds
at your 5K pace, it's gonna feel pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's easy. Why am I not? Let's run faster. So you have to figure out, in the context of the workout that you're about to do, how can I not stand there during this workout? And CrossFitters love to not game the workout and figure out the score and do large sets and large rest. And I don't care what your fitness level is, what your skill level is,
idiot.
Whatever, you're going to do significantly worse in the workout. So there's honestly a bit of an ego check when it comes to this.
That's what I was
So you look at the workout. And the easiest ones to learn on are the cardio workouts. So you see a workout, and it's almost always, sometimes it's a couplet. We had the wall ball and row workout. But the idea was, like, you should feel like you're on the rower the whole workout. Like, you sneak off the rower to do wall balls, but they're unbroken. You picked the ball up. You're, an asshole about how close it is to your rower, like, and you're just back on the rower.
Yeah.
And you have to row for that, whatever, I think was it 19 minutes? Like, you have to row for that amount.
15 minutes, 19 and 19.
Yeah.
Yep.
You have to row at the exact speed that allows you to continue doing those wall balls. More often than not, it's a triplet. And we just have this one monostructural movement that's in there that you have to pace like the shit out of to keep yourself moving. And today you guys had the burpee's not the easiest one because you don't have the rower screen telling you that 142 is probably a bad idea for this workout. Yeah. But you have to figure out, what is my cadence? Because unless you want to have slow transitions, it's kind of the only place you can slow down in that workout. Like, you need to know what your burpee cadence is to be able to pick up the bar and to be able to jump up to the pull-up bar and do that sort of thing.
Yeah, or have written down somewhere on a little whiteboard. It's like, round 1, the clock should say this. Round 2, the clock should say that. Round 3, the clock says this. And then you have an idea of whether you're ahead or behind your pace. Because there are workouts that don't afford you that. Thinking about that, remember that dumbbell thruster, 20-minute, Sherb's favorite, dumbbell thruster, toe to bar, double under, super small sets. The hard part about that workout is, like, you kind of have to do everything unbroken. So it's just a matter of like literally that it's a little bit counter to what you were just saying, but it's like there's no standing around. But like the problem is like no standing around means like I'm always doing thrusters, toes to bar, or double unders, which isn't possible. But there is a bit of like that. It's like a deliberate transition period where it's like
that was a body language workout. Like, can you stay calm, smooth in your movement, not rush to the next one?
But again, you can look at you use the other tools that you have. You use the clock. You have a coach or a training partner who has the whiteboard that says like, hey, you are 3 minutes ahead of Matt Frazier. Like, stop it. You're an idiot. Like, that sort of thing. And then there are workouts like we had whether it was last year, the rowing deadlift double under, where it was same thing as the wall ball row thing, where it's like literally the only thing that matters about this workout is that you are on the rower as much as possible and nothing else. Like there's nothing else that matters. If you can do these deadlifts and double unders unbroken, like the fact that you are seated on the rower means you're going to have a good score. And as long as you're not rowing like a jabroni, you're going to have a good score. A lot of people rowed like a jabroni. They didn't get a good score.
Yes, they sure fucking did. So yeah, you're looking at a workout, and as you get outside of the cardio realm, there's going to be things where, like, let's say they had a heavy thruster or, a moderate to heavy weight. I mean, honestly, power snatches just suck unless they're 45 pounds.
We should cancel them.
But like when you get into those movements where it's either like I literally can't dip out of the muscle up or press out of the handstand push-up, or I can't breathe and do more thrusters or power snatches, that means that you have to figure out how to not make that happen, and which means breaking it up a ton, right? So that's when you would get into the situation where, like, you're just way out ahead of somebody because they decided early on to do, I don't know, 2-2-2 in their muscle ups, or they decided to, break up their, thrusters is one of those ones where you see like a really high level athlete, there's like, they went 654 on that. What? And then later on in the workout, and you take your first 30-second break and they've accumulated 30 seconds total across the entire workout. Then that's when they just fly right past you and that sort of thing. So you have to, like, again, you're circling that one on the calendar. You are coming up with the best hypothesis that you have based on actual math and capacity and personal history. And then you're figuring out whether you were correct or not afterwards, because we listed off basically double under thruster, toe to bar row, burpee. Like, you're going to, in our open prep, the amount of combinations that you will see of those movements in the different time domains, in different rep schemes and et cetera, like there's a really good chance that you'll have notes for the open workout, pretty damn close to it. Sure. If you actually took the time to do this. And then you're going to know how to execute, like I wrote down what went wrong, what didn't go super well here. And I've been kind of locked in recently on this conversation that I've had with a remote client multiple times of whatever it takes isn't always like run through the brick wall 46 times a day. Like whatever it takes to a like type A personality could be pretty boring. Whatever it takes could be taking notes, could be strategizing, could be stretching, could be warming up, cooling down, like really like struggling at the fucking dinner table at 7 p.m. with that chicken breast that you don't want to get down, putting the video game controller down and fucking actually going to bed, like waking up when you're supposed to. Like there's so many elements to all of this where it's like whatever it takes could be kind of boring. And that like window that I'm referencing with the one workout a day where you know which one you're going to do it for will completely change how you do within the open.
Yeah, I mean, you only have so much in the physical fuel tank, right? And it, like even the mental stuff, it all comes out of the same gas tank, right? But from a pure physical standpoint, it's like there is a point at which more rowing intervals is not beneficial for you, that more thrusters is not going to move the needle for you, at least today, right? And it's like, so what is the thing today that moves the needle a little bit for you? And you're right, for a lot of athletes, it is like, hey, go sit in the bottom of a squat hold. How about that? Go do your pliability, go get in the ice bath, something like that. Or take notes, plan how you're going to execute this workout, whatever it is. Like, it might be the boring, the monotonous, and that's how, like, that's the life of the professional athlete too, right? It's not like you turn on the TV every Sunday to see your team throw down for 3.5 hours and you're like, this is fucking sick. It's like, yeah, the other 6 days and 20 hours were fucking either boring as shit, monotonous, miserable. It's all the same stuff. Like, it's all the practice. Like, what you just see for a lot of athletes is the sexy stuff, and how they got there is not so much.
And that's the case, like, everywhere, in every single thing that you're going to do, right? Like, Eddie Van Halen got to, like, stand in front of the, like, 80,000 people, whatever it was, and do those guitar solos because he just sat in his bedroom and played with his guitar, like, his entire adolescence.
Right.
Like, locked himself in a bedroom and did that. Like, and we see it in the professional sports realm. We've had the conversation about, quote unquote, how do we know what we know when there's, like, no resources for it? Thousands of hours of staring at people's feet while they squat and snatch, and like having the eye for, having the eye that we do for things like muscle ups is watching the most absurd amount of variations of the craziest looking movements you've ever seen in your entire life.
Yeah.
We've seen all of them and we've watched them over and over and over. So this applies kind of across the board. And again, can be a way to audit whether you actually want to do this thing, because it might not be the, like, glitz and glamour that you expected. Although this is such a brutal sport that I can't imagine too many people are that delusional about
you get
it.
punched in the face pretty quick. It's not as much of a, like, come on in, it's fun, water's warm. It's like, Fran.
No,
water's
fucking freezing.
No? All right, later.
See you tomorrow. Yeah.
We had, oh man, aside, yesterday was bike sprint day, and we had one of the new members. He's a local news anchor at the gym, and he's done CrossFit for a long time. But I asked him, I was like, hey man, have you been at MF for a bike sprint day yet? And he was like, nah. I was like, fantastic.
What a time to be
great.
alive.
And I was so stoked because I told him after class, I was like, you're the first person. And he hammered it. He sent it, especially on the assault bike. And a lot of people, is one of my favorite things when people come to MF for either the first time or they're doing, like, a bike sprint day for the first time. And, like, for the most part, I just assume that most people who are either dropping in have never actually done what we're about to ask them to do, which is just absolutely try to rip the handles off the bike. And even when you communicate that to some people, you get them on the bike and they're doing like it looks like you're trying pretty hard in a Peloton class, and that's your perception.
It looks like your aunt's riding an old Airdyne in a basement.
Yes, correct. Yes, exactly. That is exactly what it is.
It's not
and
quite
you're just like, hold on a second. And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm going to put this bike in the middle here, and I'm going to sprint for 5 seconds. I'm going to sacrifice myself, but this is, like, roughly what I want you to look like. And long story short, he just hammered it. He went full send. He paid for it. And then afterward, I was like, hey, man, the first person ever to come in here and actually do a bike sprint day correctly without me having to show you how to ride the bike hard. So
I have a question. Moment. So I programmed that, and my goal was, depending on fitness level, people flirting with threshold in either round 4, 5, or 6. What success rate do you think that I had? Did anyone just cruise through all 6 rounds?
Only, like, our biggest, most powerful athletes.
Yeah.
And I mean, cruise, relatively speaking, we had a couple dudes who were just 9 seconds on both machines every round.
Yeah.
It's not like they didn't pay for it after,
sure.
But I kind of knew that, and that was kind of the intent, right? It was like, for people who can really hammer it, it's like, this is very much power output training where you might finish your last round, you'll be hurting a little bit, but, like, it's not going to be quite the same as, like, a 50 cal sprint where we really put you into that past threshold point.
Sure.
But for the most part, like, for me, that was me. Like, what you wrote, that was perfect for me. That's the distance, that's the time frame where I can go pretty much, like, I will start the interval at 100% and I will be at 87% by the end of it in rounds 4, 5, and 6. And that's perfect for me. And then athletes who were a little bit less powerful, it was like, well, this was a little bit more of a bike sprint death sort of day, but we still tried
I saw some people in StreamFit that went from like 12 seconds to 19, and I was like, there it is.
one of our
it is.
one of our member who was who's historically been a morning member. He's been coming into the evenings lately. Had his first encounter with Pukey. Such a gentleman, just tied a knot in the trash bag, brought it out to the dumpster.
Whoa, like, what a guy.
Just great dude.
Oh,
yeah.
That's beautiful.
Ah, man.
Are you a puker?
No.
Have you ever?
No.
I haven't really. Cause like I've definitely like honestly, was it this week? No, it was last week. A member sent me a text about doing a workout with him in open gym, and I was eating a poke bowl. I was like, so I had like, but I don't know that I was ever in real danger. Like I've had a few times where I felt like I was. I ran 400-meter repeats at elevation, hungover, and puked. But that's like, that doesn't count, I say.
Yeah.
That's the only time that I've thrown up.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever, and maybe I've just never tried hard enough, but I feel like I've tried pretty hard.
Yeah,
a lot of
times. I can
times.
confirm that.
I also just don't, I hate it. I hate throwing up. I don't know how many people like throwing up, but I'm like, I'm gonna do everything in my power to not set myself up for failure of eating close enough to a workout that might make me throw up. But I've gotten, for me, it's more just like, my tummy hurts, my legs hurt. Like I need a nap. It's like just bad feeling. But throwing up,
I'll get
been
that
thing.
Like central nervous system shock. I now know what it means by reverse engineering it. Like those days where you can tell that you have 48 to 72 hours of like impaired everything.
Yeah.
Like cognitively, you're not quite there. Like it's across the board. The afterglow of those workouts, kind of as bad as puking. It's close. Yeah. I just think my body deals with it differently. But that like that tingly, like vasodilation feeling, like when you have that 90 minutes after a workout, something's fucking wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll get the headache post sprint sort of thing, but and that can be worse. Yesterday's the bike sprint day. That's something that has a potential to fuck me up for 2 days afterward. Just kind of sluggish. Like
that was always the one. If I do like a true full assault bike, echo bike, no, probably not echo bike, a true assault bike power output session, that's when my HRV tanks for like multiple days. Yeah. Which is kind of funny because like I think we referenced it, the myth of they tested, like if you pull a 1 rep max deadlift, your central nervous system shot for like 6.5 years. It's not the case. If you have a high heart rate for a long period of time, CrossFit, that's when your central nervous system actually tanks. So it's kind of weird for me that my intensity can be high enough. That short of a window can fuck you up that way.
To be clear, too, it was either, it's like heart rate elevated for a long period of time. Time under tension was also one of the things. So like, maybe,
which you just assume happens in CrossFit, right?
Right. But I mean, there are certain workouts where it's like, that's not, like today's a good example. It's like burpee, small set of toes to bar, power snatch. That's probably singles. It's like, that's mostly concentric loading. Yeah. It's like, hey, at 3 sets of 10 heavy deadlift, touch and go deadlift, where it's just constant time under tension. I would imagine for you on the bike, like that's the equivalent, right? Like time under tension as far as just like constant concentric action on the legs, and being someone who's pretty powerful, like can actually like,
and it has to be
yourself.
It has to be the continuous thing too. Because like I can bury myself in the moment on the skier or the rower, it doesn't fuck me up in the same way. It's
afterwards. All concentric, right? It's like, or all almost half the time under tension, really.
Craziest one's definitely the marathon prep, though. Logging those miles. Yeah, God, you sleep so well. It's crazy. Yeah, it is crazy how well you sleep.
I get why people love the endurance stuff from a physio. More, I would say, like, I mean, obviously, people like that are super fit. In CrossFit's terms, in a pretty narrow vacuum, but like I understand why people really kind of fix themselves to the endurance stuff. It feels great. You sleep like a fucking baby. It's like,
dude, getting up to beat the heat and running in the morning in the sun 3 or 4 times a week. It's just like
it's nice.
Yeah.
Meditative.
And honestly, the most insane thing for somebody like me to say.
Right.
Like if young Drew was here, he'd square up. Like, fuck, did you just say? Like, you've gone soft on us. What are you doing?
Fucking barbell on your back. Sit
right
down there.
Fucking now. All right. My final thoughts are going to be a bit of a recap, a bit of a bulleted list here, but we are transitioning into becoming more sports specific with the movements, the way that we move, the way that we strategize, and the way that we audit our strategy. Like, to me, really just locking into, this is not just another Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever it is. This is in close proximity to our season. You're still going to get fitter. You're still going to get stronger. You're still going to become more skilled, but you are practicing the actual sport. And if you can't quite wrap your mind around that, get into the Discord. Let's have some back and forth. Like, you will be very happy with your results if you can start to do that right now. Don't even wait for January 13th when we start open prep. Start that as soon as possible. And you're going to get significantly better at the actual sport itself, while, of course, continuing to lift and go hard and work on your skill.
Yeah, I would say my final thoughts are that it pays in CrossFit. It pays to be a little bit smarter than the people that you're competing against. And
it pays a lot. It pays more than you'd think.
Yeah. And
especially
that
this time of year.
And that isn't isolated specifically or solely to workout strategy and execution. It is training as well, right? It's like, what are the things that I need to get better at? What are the basics that I have not drilled down yet? Why am I, it's the super little things. It's, I'm starting to press the bar overhead before I use my legs. Like, just super basic stuff that are like, my opponents, my peers aren't doing this because maybe they just have the raw capacity to skip through it, and joke's on them. Like, if they have the raw capacity, then that just means they would have a greater capacity if they did the movements correctly.
Yeah.
So again, and man, like, final thoughts from last week too, like, learn to do the movements correctly. That's part of being a smarter athlete. It's recognizing when you need to improve positions. It's like, I don't have access to certain hip range of motion, boring shit like that. And then, obviously we tie that in with the workout strategy, knowing kind of where your personal strengths and weaknesses lie. But you can learn, like, you should, like, training is where you learn all this. The open, the quarterfinals, semifinal, whatever the fuck, I don't know, whatever we're going to call it this year. Like, that's where we show off, in the same way that's where you express your fitness. That's also where you express your athlete IQ, your just general intelligence for how you approached your training and now are approaching these tests.
Start now, carry it over. You will be very happy with your scores, your placement on the leaderboard, all that good stuff. Can we do it?
Cheers.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Make sure you head to misfitathletics.com to get signed up for your individual programming needs. You can head to teammisfit.com or the Sugar Wad Marketplace to get signed up for our affiliate programming. And
all those movements pop up in affiliate programming.
Yes, they
lots
do.
of times.
Yes, they do.